So, Jim, after your dates with the Devils were done, you ended up with the Kings.
Yeah.
There was a couple of temporary stops in Ottawa and Anaheim in between all that because you were actually selected in 3 straight expansion drafts. But the Kings really liked you apparently because they traded back for you twice.
Yeah.
So tell us, how was that? How did that feel to get, well, number one, be in LA, and two, to be selected 3 times straight in an expansion draft, but end up back with LA?
Well, it's the only record I have. It's actually a record, a known record in the NHL that Jim Thomson was the only guy to go in 3 expansion drafts.
I
So
told you guys that was the answer to
yeah,
our
yeah,
breakaway
yeah.
trivia
So
question a couple weeks ago.
there is what's funny is
Yeah,
I'll get
yeah.
people on some trivia stuff saying, "Hey, you're on this trivia thing." But anyway, that being said, this is the biggest compliment. I played for LA, and then in the first expansion draft was Minnesota and San Jose, because remember the owners split.
Yep.
So I was told I was going to be protected. I wasn't. I went to Minnesota, and I got traded back. Short time, I never ended up in Minnesota. At the entry draft, they traded back for me. They made a big trade with Minnesota, and I got traded back to LA. Played that year in LA. That summer, again, Nick Beverly said, "Yeah, we're going to protect you." And I was on the unprotected list. I looked in the newspaper and got picked up by Ottawa. So that one hurt me because here I am playing with my idol and Wayne and all these Oilers, and growing up in Edmonton was the reason I signed in LA. And then the following year, I wasn't that upset because I got to go down the road to Anaheim, the new team, Mighty Ducks and stuff like that. So, back to this is a story out of Wayne's mouth. Bruce McNall, our owner, told me this. When I was in Ottawa, I got traded for 20 goal scorer Bob Kadowski. And Bruce McNall, when I went to San Jose, was the first where I flew from Ottawa to San Jose. The Kings were playing San Jose. And Bruce met me in the lobby, and he's like, "I got to tell you something." He said, "Wayne made this trade, and he said that he wanted you back for your dressing room culture. You're a selfless player, and obviously I helped protect him and all that. But he's the guy that made this trade." He went to Barry Melrose and said, "Get Thomson back here." So I actually asked Wayne. He said, "It's all true." He said, "I wanted you back," and that was a huge,
Wow.
huge
Man, oh
compliment.
man.
That's
Huge.
awesome.
So when you asked that question, yeah, I was like, wow. But Wayne actually made the trade, and that was big for me. So, and this is when I was a free agent after New Jersey. They bought me out of my last year, however that worked. You become a unrestricted free agent. So I had 4 teams I could have signed with. I had actually agreed to go to Detroit because Probert, all that era had left, and Detroit did not have many physical players. So my agent, Steve Bartlett, said, "This is your best fit right now. This is, you go to camp, you get a chance to stay instead of being sent to the minors." So I agreed to Detroit. And the next day he called me back. I was in Edmonton for the summer. And he goes, "Just so you know, LA matched Detroit's deal." And not even hesitating, I said, "I want to go to LA." He goes, "But it's a bad pick because they got McSorley, Jay Miller, Chikrin, all these tough guys." He said, "You're going to end up in New Haven." I said, "Steve, I will find a way. I want to go and play with Gretzky," because growing up in Edmonton, right?
Yep.
Sure.
So, the rest is history. And that's how that all went down, or I would have been going to Detroit if I would have listened to him.
Wow.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah.
No kidding. That's very, very interesting. And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned Bruce McNall. Now I know that what happened later on towards the end there when you got caught with the money laundering and all that. But how was he as a guy? I mean, he seemed like he was a really good guy.
He was the nicest man to us. We were, I think, there's only 2 teams in the league who had their own planes, us and Detroit at the time. And he spoiled us. And yes, he was spoiling us with other people's money. He paid for that. But this guy was so kind. He was so nice. He's lit up the room. When him and John Candy and Wayne bought the Toronto Argonauts, John Candy was our honorary captain. So he had all this excitement around us. And I can't say enough. He made mistakes. We all do. And he was just a really, really nice man. I have a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, he always did seem it, whenever they interviewed him and all that. And, a while back we had Tom Laidlaw on the show, and he was with the Kings in 88, 89.
Yeah.
And he was telling us that the LA locker room, especially right there in Los Angeles, can get pretty wild sometimes with all the celebrities in there all the time. And did you ever get to meet any of the celebrities there?
So I got my basement. I think when I was on Barry's show, I saw my basement. I got a whole wall of pictures of myself. Every movie star that came in after a game, I was a kid from Edmonton, grew up in a trailer park. I'll tell you the first story, and I was on Tom's show and I told him the story. So we had just played Boston, and I hadn't seen a movie star yet. And I bent over untying my skates, and I sat beside Jay Miller. And when the room opened up, it would fill up. And there's, Cher could be in there. You never know who was coming in. So I see a black pair of UGG boots, normally that women wear, skin-tight jeans. And I'm thinking it's, a female, whatever. So I'm not thinking much of it. And I'm looking over here. And then I hear this, "Hey, Jay, good game." And I look up. It's Rocky. I'm like, what? Wait, it can't be, right? It can't be. So I'm looking at this guy, and I got a picture, and ironically, it's if you remember the movie Tango and Cash, him and Kurt Russell.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So Kurt, who was a big fan of, was over here. So I got a picture with the two of them in the locker room that night. But that was my first experience of a movie star. But I mean, the people we met, like, President Reagan and Nancy were on all our playoff games. And, I got a wall of fame of, the late John Candy was just a great guy. And so what Tom said is true. It would just fill up, and it was like, fantasy land.
Man,
awesome.
that's just incredible.
That
really, really is.
I like that
What a
movie, by
time.
the way, Tango and Cash. That was a good movie.
Yeah, it was.
A couple of actors.
I still own the DVD.
Couple of actors are pretty big hockey fans. Michael J. Fox, I believe he's friends with Wayne.
He was there.
Yeah.
And
I gotta tell you, I gotta tell you this before I forget. So this whole group of movie stars come in with bodyguards, and I'm like, wow, Wayne Gretzky's really popular down here, and they're wearing hats, right? Wayne's World, right? And I'm thinking, holy jumping. So it's
Mike
Dana
Myers.
Carvey, it's Mike Myers, and this whole. And I'm thinking, man, these guys are huge Wayne Gretzky fans. Not to know that there's a movie coming out called Wayne's World, right?
Yeah.
So I'll never forget laughing. And Mike Donnelly goes, "You dumbass." He said they're promoting a film they're doing. But here's a good story. We admire, like, you sit there and look at the movie stars and you go, wow, right? Then the movie stars look at us and they're going to us, wow. Well, the night Guns N' Roses was in the dressing room, right? I forget who said it. He goes, "We want to be you, you want to be us, but we all want to be them." We're all like, yep.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So in your last season in LA, the Kings actually went on that magical run to the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember. I mean, I was just out of high school then. I remember watching every game of that just intently on Hockey Night in Canada because we actually got CBC here. So, just take us through. I wanted to start with Game 6 against Toronto.
Yeah.
And people, just for a quick background, in case anybody didn't know, the Kings were really an underdog story here at this point. And Toronto had a dominant season that year. They were supposed to go to the final and all that. And the Kings actually won Game 6. To take it to Game 7 in Toronto, but Wayne got away with one, I think.
He did. He did.
So how was that in the locker room afterwards going, did we get away with one or what? I mean, that was kind of...
I only played in Game 5, and I just want to take you back to Maple Leaf Gardens when Glenn Anderson scored in double overtime. We go down 3-2, and we're going, okay, you know what? You had this feeling that that's it. So after that high stick, we were watching it. The guys who didn't dress were watching it in the dressing room.
Okay.
And all I can remember is, oh my gosh, he's getting kicked out. We're done. We're done. No call, Kerry Fraser. And obviously we all know the end result. Wayne scores in overtime. I can still remember him flicking the puck up and dancing. So, that was unbelievable. And I always tell people this, he should have been kicked out. But in game 3, Gilmore headbutted McSorley behind our net.
That's
And
right.
that would have been a match penalty, which could have made a difference, as we move along. So both match penalties, we'll call it. Wayne's wouldn't have been a match; it would have been a major. Would have been kicked out. So, and then as we know, Wayne played his greatest game. In his words, his best NHL game ever was Game 7 in Maple Leaf Gardens against the Leafs, and he was unbelievable that night. Wendell, I think, had a hat trick to keep it close, but it was amazing. It was surreal.
Oh, it was absolutely.
That's
And
awesome.
people kind of forget too. That was almost like a redemption for Wayne because he had a rough regular season. He had the back injury that kept him out for like half the season, and when he came back, he had a little bit of a slow start to get going. But once he got going, I mean, he's a great one. What are you going to do, right?
Yeah,
And then
he was on a mission.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And then you get to Montreal and they played fantastic in Game 1. I mean, they were world beaters.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like this was going to be a quick serease. And honestly, they were winning in Game 2.
Listen, I tell the story. Game 1, Luke had, in his hometown, in a sense. I believe he had 2 goals, assists. We won the game, I think 4-1 or 5-1 or something like that. In Game 2, we're up 2-1 with a minute 30 left or something like that, and
Right.
the illegal stick, Marty's illegal stick, and it was hard to believe. Because Marty's sticks were all illegal. But they were. And what's funny is I was on in overtime. I went on Hockey Night in Canada with Don Cherry and Ron McLean. And Don called me over before we went on. And he goes, I was told 3 of your guys use illegal sticks. And it's true. Alex Zitnik, Luke Robitaille, and Marty McSorley. And the difference was Alex and Luke changed going into the third period because nobody's going to call an illegal stick in the first or second period.
Right.
Well, we are told, and it's, more stories have come out, that the security, we had 24-hour security in the Forum at our dressing room. So their security, we're gone to bed, we're at the hotel, that they went in and checked every stick. And the reason Marty was called is because every one of Marty's sticks were illegal. That's why they called Marty and not the other 2. And we know, Desjardins had the hat trick. And I'll say this to you guys, going home 1-1, we should have been really happy. The plane was so quiet, it was scary. It's one of the few times I saw Wayne get angry. And he knew that was going to be bad. As we know, the next 2 games were won in overtime, and Game 5 was 4-1, I believe it was. But we had them. And I'll say this, if we win, and Wayne said this, he goes, boys, we win this game, which would have been Game 2. He goes, we'll win 4 straight. He goes, we'll go home and win 4 straight. And everything changed, and Patrick Roy took over.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. And actually, those remaining games were close too.
Yeah, and the next 2 were overtime until the final game, where, it was just, it was over at that point. But, yeah, as the years go on and I watch the Stanley Cup being handed out, you don't realize at that time, a player like myself, what I would, do to have a Stanley Cup ring and my name on that cup would have been just, it's a kid's dream, right? First was to make it, but then when you see how close you were, it does sting you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's got to. And I'd also heard, years afterwards, obviously different things come out, like you were just saying, that there were also a couple of Montreal Canadiens who had illegal sticks themselves, because apparently, I mean, it wasn't widespread, but it wasn't also like the biggest taboo thing in the world to have that, because at that time, I think the league had pretty stringent restrictions on the curves of the blades, correct?
They did. There was, there was a measuring device that they had, and you put it toe to toe, and if it touched, you were good. And then it had another thing for the thickness of the blade. So goalie sticks they would measure if they were too big, right? But I'll never forget when they called Marty's stick, and we were just going, oh my gosh. Are any of his sticks legal? Because he had this spin out. He actually had a big straight curve. Because you can have curves that are heel curves that the gauge will always hit, like, this weird twist.
Right.
But when you have a round curve, not a chance. Not a chance.
Yeah. And you could almost tell it on TV too, just before they put the blade on it. It's like, uh-oh.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It gives you kind of the chills to think when Kerry Fraser looked at Marty. He's like, put the stick over the boards. I'm going, can't be. But then you think, okay, kill the penalty, right? Kill the penalty. We're still good. And as soon as Desjardins scored, it's like, it's not going to end good. This is not going to end good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
and it's like we were talking before the show, though. I mean, people forget just how good Marty was, especially that entire season. He was fantastic. I mean, he's going to be known for that, of course, but he was so solid as far as his defensive play and really his offensive play too. And it's too bad that that's what's going to be remembered.
Well, listen, Marty was a great teammate. He was a great guy. He cared about his teammates. Obviously, he was selfless. Between that and the Donald Brashear thing, it really tarnished who great Marty. He was just a great story because he worked so hard to become who he was. Nobody worked harder. He spent hours and hours and hours working on skating and shooting his skills. And sorry, guys. He, these are two things that he's remembered for, and it's sad.
Yeah.